Welcome into Locked On Knicks. Alex Wolfe and Gavin Schall here, and a good day all around for the Knicks, all things considered. Good news on the Julius Randle front. He might be out weeks, not months or the season, which is great. And then the Knicks minus Julius and minus OG Anunoby destroy the Charlotte Hornets on the road in yet another proxy MSG home game. So we're going to talk about all that and more next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And I wanted to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us a part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit that notification bell on YouTube or the auto download function on your favorite podcast app after you subscribe so you never miss an episode, because we're here for you guys 5 days a week, if not more. This is another one of those if not more weeks, because Gavin did an emergency live stream earlier talking about the Julius Randle news, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more. I'm Alex Wolfe. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site, The Strickland, which you can find strict.land, and he is Gavin Schall, favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster and emergency commentator on Knicks news. But Gavin, we got good news. So I'm going to present it again because it bears repeating and talking about a second time between the two of us. So Woj comes out first and drops a story, says Knicks Julius Randle expect to be out weeks, not months, with his dislocated shoulder. And then Ian Begley comes through with some more notes on that, says there's nothing conclusive yet regarding Julius Randle's timetable. Per league source said Randle will be out at least a few weeks, which was obvious given the shoulder dislocation. Surgery hasn't been ruled out, but testing to date has led to some optimism it can be avoided. And then noted that Woj reports there's optimism that Julius Randle's timetable will be weeks, not months, which also suggests that Randle can avoid surgery. So, Gavin, I mentioned this yesterday, but I dealt with a shoulder injury, I guess sort of similar myself a few years ago. And this sort of tracks like my best guess, even though the Knicks have not given an official statement on what the injury is or really addressed it pretty much at all, except for just Tibbs being like, I'm worried, and then like, I'm less worried. That's it.
Ice.
Ice. I don't know, just ice it. I guess, I don't know, but
on the court and off.
But my best guess is maybe a partially torn labrum or something here would have been what happened to Randle, that he avoided a full tear. Which if you get a partial tear, that can be rehabbed over the course of a few weeks or, potentially a month or a little over a month to just sort of strengthen the area back up. And perhaps they run into a situation where I believe this is what happened with Clyde mentioned on the broadcast today, actually, it happened with Wade at one point where he rehabbed a partially torn shoulder and then, got back, finished the season out, and then got the surgery in the offseason just to fully repair things. Maybe that's what Julius ends up doing. It would be very reminiscent of what ended up ultimately happening with his ankle last year, where he sprained it a couple times, played through the pain in the playoffs, and then almost immediately after the playoffs were done, went and got the surgery, cleaned up his ankle, and, got himself on the road to getting better for the next season. So I guess we'll see, but good news, at least as good as it could be related to Randle's injury at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I said most of it earlier, but I'm ecstatic, obviously, because then maybe this is just like the burn of 20 years of torture in my life for the most part, being a Knicks fan. But I sort of had in my head like, all right, no news is bad news, and like and the hammer's gonna drop at some point today, and my stomach's gonna sink, and the season's gonna be over, and I'm gonna be miserable. And I don't think this totally changes the Knicks trajectory. Like I have him, and this is I have him like I have inside medical knowledge. I'm like in my fairy tale in my mind, he's gonna miss 14 games, which would be a month, and the Knicks can go like 7-7 during that stretch. I mean, I don't know about you. Tonight gave me a little bit more confidence. Like, all right, maybe there's a world where they're a little better than that. The schedule's harder than it's been, but it's certainly not overwhelming. And if they go 7-7 versus like what would they've gone with Randle, 10-4, 11-3, Does that ultimately change their life? To me, the biggest thing there is just trying to avoid the Celtics side of the bracket. And maybe if things go really bad, it works out for the Knicks and that they stumble to the 6th seed and do it that way. But then you have to play Philly or Milwaukee in the first round versus getting Cleveland, which presumably would be the Knicks' preferred matchup. But to me, like the biggest like miss window here is it's going to be harder to get you to the 3 seed and avoid a hypothetical second round matchup with the Celtics. But you know what? If the alternative was the season being over, it's kind of like it's champagne problems, Alex.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think that, if Randle's able to come back and get back in, like, it doesn't really matter what seed the Knicks are, I don't think, because they proved last year that they're so comfortable with like playing as a road underdog, sort of, like they did that. It's easy to forget, but like they were people generally outside of like Knicks fandom didn't really have a lot of faith in them going into Cleveland last year.
I'll include myself in that.
Yeah. I mean, it was like a lot of people were like, oh, like Cleveland probably in like 6 games, something like that. And, they kind of went in and proved everybody wrong on that. And, really they have this sort of grinded out game that translates well on the road in the playoffs. So seeding doesn't matter a ton. As much as I would love for the Knicks to be able to host a playoff series and get that first game at MSG and the vibes that would come with that and everything else, like that doesn't matter so much to me as much as like just get this team healthy and ready to go. Like if they could ideally get Mitchell Robinson back, which then mitigates this whole like Isaiah Hartenstein situation where it seems like he's sort of on a bit of a minutes restriction right now, trying to manage that Achilles tendonitis. If you can get Julius Randle back fully healthy, if you can get OG, like give him rest days here and there, because he's got it. I've been noticing, I mean, he was out in this game, and I've noticed that like weird tape job that he's had on that right elbow since he came to the Knicks. And I've kind of wondered what was up with that. And then all of a sudden in this game, it's like whatever it was, like tendonitis or whatever they called it. It's like, oh, finally there was a flare up, I guess, for this thing that's been bothering him. So whatever, like do whatever you got to do. Like if it means losing a couple extra regular season games or something, I don't hate it. I know the Tibbs would hate it, but I don't hate it. And it seems like he's at least Hartenstein is giving me some hope that he is at least turning over a new leaf of like, if the medical staff tells him something, he's respecting it at least, and, trying to preserve these guys for the whole rest of the season. So I guess we'll see. And, the trade deadline is going to say a lot about what the Knicks' fate could ultimately be too. But the best part of today is that we still get to dream about that stuff because, there's a chance, maybe we'll get 3 weeks in and there will be unfortunate reporting, after the All-Star break or something. They'll be like, they've tried with Julius, but seems like there's more damage than they thought. Things aren't progressing in rehab the way that they want. And he's going to have to ultimately get the surgery, in which case we'll just be resigned to that. But until such a time, or until when we get the good news that he's tracking towards a return, we at least get to kind of, be hopeful for a while again, which is nice because it was definitely felt like a blow the other day. And it had the news come out that he was going to need surgery. That was going to be kind of a bummer, even with how well the Knicks are playing right now.
Yeah, and I mentioned it earlier, but I just think when you have a player as good as Jalen Brunson is now, and as we're about to get into, tonight was yet another example of that, and a guy who, like, on the right night in the right playoff series, like, can make an argument for being a top 10 guy in the league. Like, every season doesn't have to be all in, because going all in every season, as the Suns are finding out, can ultimately be to the detriment of your long-term future with a star. But every season, like, you have to maximize your championship odds within reason when you have a guy who's 27 years old, pretty close to the peak of his powers, and is like maybe legitimately good enough to be the best player on a championship team. What does that look like? Is that a world where Joel Embiid's your best player for 3 quarters on a championship team and Jalen Brunson's your 4th quarter championship killer? I don't know. That might be what it takes, because there's still a tier that he is definitively below, and probably because of his height will always be below. And yet he's blown away my wildest expectations for what he could be, even after last season. And maybe I should have learned my lesson in that Heat series. Point being, like, this, you don't want to lose years for injuries and for reasons outside of your control. And obviously the stars who've had the best careers have had the fewest of those seasons where they just got completely screwed by an essential teammate getting hurt. And Julius Randle is about as essential as any second guy in the NBA is. So really good news for the Knicks. And at least on night one without Julius Randle, Alex, we saw they could survive pretty well.
Yeah. And, if I may throw in one last thing of just like how annoying it is that this would happen to Julius of all players, like, which was kind of the same thing with last year. This dude keeps himself, like, say whatever you will about his game or whether you like how he plays or whatever, but this guy clearly puts in some of the most work I think I've ever seen of any player in our generation of Knicks into his body, into his conditioning, into ensuring that he can be as durable as humanly possible. And yet he's just had these two just really bad luck injuries the last couple of years. And, last year it was the sprained ankle and then the sprained ankle again in the playoffs that clearly hampered him quite a bit. And then this year it's, he's playing the best ball that he's maybe ever played as a Knick, even though he's not scoring the most points right up at the point when he gets injured. But you and I were saying, like, he was seeing the floor as good as he ever has. He was playing the best, like, complementary style basketball on this team and sort of finding his perfect self. And then, has this happen to his shoulder? It's unfortunate, but if he's able to pull through and come back this year and, able to get that shoulder back good enough, like as a, his offhand shoulder, which is important to note, and is able to get back to a point where he feels comfortable being on the floor, I would be so happy for him and honestly so happy for this team because they really need him. And there is a chance, there's always a chance that if your team gets hot just right in the NBA that you can make it to a finals or something and really capture some lightning in a bottle. And maybe that happens for the Knicks this year. Who's to say? But Gavin, I want to let everybody know about our friends over at Quiiiz real quick, and then we're going to get into the Charlotte game and talk about a real feel-good game to cap off a feel-good news day. The Knicks just went in and shorthanded clobbered the Hornets, especially in the second half. Jalen Brunson, who we were just talking up, had just a phenomenal game in this one. Dante DiVincenzo was great. Quentin Grimes had some really good stuff. And a really bizarre front court rotation had a really good game as well. So there's a lot to talk about, but first I'm going to let everybody know about our friends over at Quiiiz. This episode of Locked On Knicks is brought to you by Quiiiz. Today, we're going to have some fun and test your Knicks knowledge. So let's see here. I'm going to find a Knicks trivia question here to ask you all and see how well you know the Knicks. Man, we need some harder questions in here. The Knicks play their home games at which arena? The Garden Arena, the Forum, the Barclays Center, or Madison Square Garden?
Wait, Alex, Wally Serviak would get this one wrong, so you got to apologize for that.
That's true. Well, technically it's Madison Square Garden, though this is maybe a trick question because Barclays Center games are also home games for the Knicks. At any rate, if you thought that was easy, good news. You might be able to win some money on Quiiiz. So Quiiiz with 3 eyes is the next generation trivia experience. It's also the world's first platform where you can earn money playing knowledge games. And for Locked On Knicks fans, they've created an NBA quiz game where you can test your knowledge and win real cash. So you can play with friends or other fans and let your knowledge shine all the way to the bank. You can play without downloading anything. Just go to app.quiiiz, Quiiiz.com and start playing today. NBA Quiiiz is the ultimate knowledge challenge for fans that live and breathe basketball. And I tried playing this game. It's pretty fun. It's reminds me a little bit of like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, sort of, but you're playing head to head against other players. So basically a question will come up. It'll be multiple choice. And then you pick your answer. The faster you pick your answer, the more points you get if you're correct. And then, of course, if you're wrong, you don't get any points. And then at the end, it tallies up your score against other players for a number of rounds. And then if you have the highest score at the end, you get the pot. So you essentially put in a few bucks to potentially triple, quadruple, quintuple that money and win a big prize pool at the end. It's pretty fun. So go to app.quiiiz.com to test your knowledge and win cash today. That's Quiiiz with 3 eyes, just like a 3-pointer. There you go, basketball. Play now, showcase your skills, and take home cash prizes. App.quiiiz.com, where fans become champions. All right, Gavin, we're back in to keep talking. Well, to start talking about this Knicks game. We've talked about the first bit of good news. Now the second bit of good news. The Knicks came to Charlotte. First half was a little rough, mostly just because the Knicks couldn't hit any threes. It was just like you just kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I feel like, like they were getting played way too tight by the Hornets and also clearly outclassing them. Like the Hornets weren't scoring particularly effectively either. And the Knicks were kind of like, I don't want to say that they were playing a little too loose, like that, but there was a little bit of looseness to it. Like some of the passes were a little sloppy and, whatever. It wasn't quite as bad as like the game a few weeks ago. Was it against Washington? I think that was the one where the whole game they were just super sloppy and whatever. Like they had their
they were
moments.
thrown off by Jeremy Cohen dancing in that game, to be fair.
Clearly. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Saw him on the Jumbotron and didn't know how to react.
They were like, I don't know if I want to play basketball anymore, if this is what it leads to.
This is what happens, the humanity.
I'm just kidding. I thought Jeremy danced a lot better than I would. So shout out to him.
He did dance well. But at any rate, they were playing not their best first half, but somewhat sloppy, but they were generating enough good looks against a really bad defensive team that they should have been up by more, and yet go into halftime barely up. And then third quarter just laid waste to Charlotte and said, okay, this is over. Jalen Brunson just started carving them up. I mean, I would say poor someone, one individual name, but poor everyone. They tried different defenders on him. It didn't matter. Whoever ended up on him was going to get cooked. And Brunson, didn't even have to really go that deep into his bag. It was just like one or two little crossovers, and he was just walking right to the rim. I thought that the tone was kind of set in the second half by Jericho Sims cutting free and going back to, or was that beginning in the second quarter? Now I'm forgetting, but that was a cool play. Regardless, Jericho Sims cut back door. And
that was the beginning of the second quarter. Yep.
Beginning of the second quarter. Yeah, I timed that one wrong. I was thinking second half, but that was second quarter. Regardless, cool play by Jericho Sims. I'll talk about him in a minute, but all in all, just a really dominant second half for the Knicks where they finally figured things out from three and just, I don't know, they looked like the team, even without two of their three best players, still looked like the way better team here.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Brunson just changed this game at the start of the third. I actually thought, by his standards, like I was getting ready to come on here and rip him a new one. No, I wasn't. But I did think like, oh, this is kind of his first, like, again, by his standards, sort of poor half that he's had in weeks, seemingly. And then he comes in the third and scores or assists on seven of the Knicks' first 9 buckets. They had a 14-0 run at one point, ultimately outscore Charlotte 44-24. MSG was kind enough to put up a graphic with the final stats from the quarter, and they were just insane. They were 17 of 21 from the field and 6 for 8 from 3 after starting this game, 2 for 17 from 3. So just totally changed the game. Brunson was absolutely cooking Cody, Caleb Martin. I know it's Cody, but they're the same guy. And he, I thought it was a big shift because in the first half, it felt like he had no room to operate. And I thought Charlotte did a pretty good job just basically having 3 guys tangentially guard him at once. And the Knicks, based on that 2 for 17 from 3, weren't really taking advantage of it. But then Brunson just got going. Like he scored on this beautiful backdoor from Hartenstein. So it was fun to realize, oh yeah, Brunson, like if he played with, I don't want to say better teammates, but let's just say he had like a star wing, or like when he played with someone like Luka, he still has that in his game where he can just cut off the ball. And then he was forced to come back in the fourth quarter when the Hornets made a mini run, and he just had this like nasty move on Martin, like hezzy burst, blow by floater that like he threw up to the rafters and somehow dropped in. Then a turnaround jumper. Charlotte called timeout. Knicks were up 109-91. It was over at that point. But the other guy, Alex, who really drove the Knicks to this win, and I feel like we never totally give enough credit to. Part of it is because Tom Thibodeau hates playing him down the stretch of games, but Dante DiVincenzo, OG Anunoby out. Dante, you're the new Luol Deng. 42 minutes in this one, 10 for 22 from the field, 5 for 15 from 3, 28 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, monster outing, game high plus 24 for the Knicks. What did you see from him?
I mean, pretty much just the best version of what he offers. I mean, he just like everybody kind of had that cold shooting first half, and whatever, it was like the whole team just kind of went cold for a bit. But the second half, I mean, he just came out like a ball of fire, not just getting his usual quick look threes though, but like making cuts inside, absorbing contact, like kind of filling the role that the Knicks needed him to with OG out, because that's been sort of OG's thing lately, is get inside, take that contact, finish through it. And maybe it's just due to the fact that like Charlotte is not as talented of a team, and doesn't have as many guys that can really throw a body into him, because we've known coming into this year, Dante has issues finishing around the hoop. That's like one of the only real flaws to his game as like a role player. But he did great in this game, managed to finish some shots like that. The three was just as ridiculous as ever, especially in the second half. I just, something about his release, I just feel like I said this, I don't know, maybe a week or two ago, and it still stands. I just think every single game, it seems like he tries to take like another fraction of a second off of it. And it's getting to the point where the ball, if he gets a good pass right to his chest, he's barely even catching the ball before he shoots it. It's just like ball gets there and pew, done. It's just in, and it doesn't matter where he is anymore. He's starting to shoot like the Curry range threes too. Hit one of those in this game from a few feet behind the line. We're seeing this like new comfort level from him that, based off how other teams that he's played for perceive him, he's definitely never hit before. Like, he's finding a level of consistency, and maybe it's just with the role. Maybe it's just the fact that he has a good starting role for like a good steady starting role for like the first time in his NBA career, really, where he's able to like just be trusted for 35 minutes a game. But we're starting to see like a new version of DiVincenzo that is just ridiculously lethal from three and consistent from three, because that's always been the biggest complaint from other team fans that he's played for. And then also starting to figure out some of the other aspects too, like the cutting and finishing and things like that. So it was very good, very complete game for him. And he really played like the number two guy in this game when the Knicks desperately needed someone to like step up and do that without Randle and Anunoby there.
Yeah, I mean, 42% from three this year. He's never shot better than 40%, taking more threes per game than he's ever taken, just over 6 per game. I mean, what a freaking signing, right? 4 years, 47 million. I think there's some incentives in there that can boost it up to something like 53. But I mean, with the new TV deal kick in, like, he is going to be paid what most eighth men are paid. And I mean, for the foreseeable future, unless the Knicks get a major upgrade there and like trade for someone like Donovan Mitchell, like, he's your starting two guard, and he's a very solid one. And again, at that deal, like, it is crazy. Like, I love like just some of the tangential stuff he did in this game. Like, had a crazy help side block on Miles Bridges, like some self-created threes. That back cut he had where Jalen Brunson hit him, and he had like a tough like double pump finish, like hanging in the air. Scored 9 straight at one point in the third quarter. It was interrupted by one Brunson miss, but had a pull up, then a 3, and then just like a 2-step like pirouette through 2 defenders for a layup, then another pull up. He's just, it feels like whenever the Knicks need him, like even like go back to that Pacers game that we've all wiped from our memories, the night of the trade where everyone was gone and he just casually scored like 38 in that game. Like, whenever the Knicks have needed more from him, he's figured out a way to do it. He's been better on the road than at home, which is either clutch or weird depending on your perspective, but just an awesome season. Like, I can't say enough good things about how well that signing has worked out. It's been beyond my wildest expectations, Alex. And if you want your life to be beyond your wildest expectations, well, if you're anything like me, then you better go to therapy. So we're going to take a break, tell you about our buddies over at BetterHelp, and come back and finish up, wrapping up conversation of this game, including a fun performance from the Knicks' 2 bigs. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. So if you're anything like me around New Year's, you get obsessed with how to change yourself, and you make some extreme resolution. Maybe you finally organize one part of your space and you want to tackle another. Maybe you're taking supplements every morning. Now you want to finally eat breakfast. Therapy helps you find your strength so you can ditch the extreme resolutions and make changes that really stick. Because ultimately, isn't that kind of the goal of the resolution, to do something that works instead of to just say something insane, do it for 3 weeks, and then give it up for the rest of the year? Therapy helps you in the area of self-awareness, self-recognition, helps you figure out your limits, and then helps you figure out how to overcome them on a realistic timeline. If you're thinking about starting therapy, you should give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So celebrate the progress you've already made. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA.
And today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. And happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And if you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. Let me tell you, those football snacks, I make some mean ones. I'm going to make a cheeseburger dip, take it to a Super Bowl party somewhere. And I love Super Bowl Sunday, man. Everything's so fun about it. I don't know. It's like my favorite get together with friends holiday. Everybody makes a couple dishes. You just pig out on junk food all night, watch some funny commercials, explain football to your one friend for like the 15th straight year that doesn't watch football, but just comes to the Super Bowl party. It's awesome, man. And this year I'm going to be placing some bets with FanDuel Sportsbook. And if you're an NFL conspiracy theorist, then this should be easy money in your eyes. But Travis Kelce is currently at plus 2,000 to win Super Bowl MVP. He's coming off a huge AFC Championship game. Obviously, there's the Taylor Swift effect where, if you're the conspiracy theorist type, you're going to be like, well, the NFL is going to want him to win MVP so they can get Taylor Swift up on that podium. Whatever. Maybe that happens, but plus 2,000, that's some pretty good money to make. So that's a bet I'm certainly going to be placing. And FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. So new customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Gavin, we're back in to finish talking about this game, and I want to talk about the big man rotation in this game. It was interesting. I don't know what I was expecting for the starting lineup for this game. Given had Anunoby been playing, I think we could have pretty safely said, well, Josh Hart's going to start, and whichever one of those two you want to say is the nominal 4 in that scenario, fine. But I think that's the plan with Randle out, just because Hart at least gives you like some of that rebounding that Randle gives you, like the crash in, out of nowhere rebounding, which both of them are really great at. Hart's also really good at getting transition started, which is a big Randle thing, being able to just like turn around, whip a pass down the floor if you need him to. Also just get running himself and, do that. He could do some light setup on the offensive end, stuff like that. And Anunoby should be able to cover defensively for, cover 4s or 3s or whoever you really need him to cover. But with Anunoby out, then we get Precious Achiuwa starting, which was an interesting choice, and yet one that worked out okay. Like, he hit his lone 3-point attempt in the second half in this game, and that was sort of one of those things that started getting the Knicks going, weirdly enough. It was like he hit that, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, if Precious is hitting them tonight, we're all hitting them. We're all going to eat from 3 right now. But he had a really solid game. Isaiah Hartenstein puts in 16 and a half minutes. I think about as efficient and solid of a 16 and a half minutes as you could have hoped for. 10 points, 4 boards, 3 steals in that amount of time, shot 4 of 4. And then Jericho Sims comes in for almost 24 minutes again. He shoots 3 of 3, extremely efficient for this big man rotation in this game. Shoots 3 of 3 for 6 points, 7 boards, 2 assists. Had that backdoor cut dunk where he just slipped every Hornets player on his side of the court to get back there and get a dunk from Deuce McBride to start the second quarter. That was awesome. I've loved his play of late, but a really interesting big man rotation that actually worked out pretty well. And Gavin, I think one of my big takeaways from this game and last is I think there is for sure a directive from the training staff that Hartenstein has to be on a minutes limit now. So I don't know how severe that's going to be going forward, but this is the second straight game that he's been back from that Achilles tendonitis, where it's just like, okay, you're gonna start, and we're gonna give you that, and maybe a couple extra minutes, but like you're basically just gonna start each half. And unless we like desperately need you to close the game, like you're probably not going to. And luckily, I mean, it's been huge blowouts the last couple games, so we haven't had to test that theory. But I think it's pretty clear he's on a minutes restriction, which makes it all the better that Precious and Jericho, I think, have really stepped up to the task lately with the minutes that they've needed to play.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see if it carries over against better teams or in closer games, and if Tibbs can maintain that restraint, assuming that is a medical recommendation for him. But for the time being, I'm in love with it, and I'm impressed. Tom Thibodeau is sticking through it. I'll just wrap up with some quick hitters on everyone. Another really good Josh Hart game, to your point, 9 rebounds in the first half, which was ridiculous. Finishes with 8, 12, and 7 assists. Like, that is an all-time Josh Hardy box score, if there ever was one. Like, really good work just running the floor in transition, even in semi-transition. Again, like, had another possession where he passed up an open 3, and it led to like Grimes catching a hot potato and having to like force up like a really tough mid-range jumper. So that's not great. He made up for it in my mind, though, in the third quarter. Just had this brilliant cross-court dime after Grimes fumbled a ball into the corner, just barely saved it. Hart caught it, and just the basketball IQ of, you could tell he's like, all right, this is a scramble situation. Where's everyone on the court? And the ability to just map the entire floor in seconds and catch it and immediately whip it 30 feet across the court to DiVincenzo wide open for 3, like on a dime. That was just a killer pass. I'm with you. I thought iHeart was great. Hit a turnaround fadeaway to beat the shot clock. I love him when he gets the ball and the shot clock's winding down, and you can tell he takes such joy in the fact of like, all right, I get to take a shot that Jalen would take, and no one can what me out because the time's dwindling on the shot clock. So I thought that was funny. He had an and one transition to finish. Precious, my only comment is when he hit the 3, it just sounded like Breen let out the loudest sneeze of all time. So that was awesome. I was with you on Sims. That second quarter play is a Tibbs special whenever Jericho Sims plays. And I'm almost shocked that every opposing coach in the league doesn't have it mapped out and like screaming at his team, hey, they're going to run this. And what happened there was Sims sets a screen for DiVincenzo and then just kind of lollygags around like he's out of the play. And then Grimes comes and sets a back screen for him. And then Sims just loops around for an alley-oop. Perfect pass from Deuce. It's almost like a Spain pick and roll, but without the on the ball portion. It's a cool little set. And then Deuce, he just had the sequence of the game where he fought over 3 screens to stick with Cody Martin, stripped him, ran the floor, and then added insult to injury, draining a 3. And that was the point where I was like, all right, this game's a joke, but that was awesome. That he can just really shoot the basketball, Alex. That's my biggest take around the year. And then Grimes, great stuff attacking the basket. Once again, almost had a poster. I'm disappointed in his shot, down below 37% on the season on mostly open shots. So that's my one gripe with Grimes, but he's been playing great.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight Deuce a bit because I think we're reaching conundrum status with him at this point where it's like he's playing so well that it's getting really difficult. Like the Knicks still obviously need someone that can initiate a little better with that second unit, but like Deuce is going to need to get some playing time, I think, still, because defensively he's still such a menace, and then offensively in the month of January. And I understand, it's only a portion of the season, but 14 games he's played in January. This is we're judging a lot of things right now based off the OG Anunoby era.
I mean, to be fair, that's his whole season, right? Like he didn't really play before that. Yeah,
he had a little bit of playing time here and there prior to that, but this is like the most, consistent playing time he's gotten since OG came to the Knicks. Shooting 48.2% from 3 right now in the new year. And he's shot 56 attempts in the new year. So he's shooting 27 of 56. I mean, it's getting harder and harder to imagine a world where, like, even if the Knicks acquire Brogdon or something, that you don't find just a few minutes a game to get Deuce in there.
Alex, can I throw this out there? I think the beauty of Brogdon is like you can play them together, and obviously it's going to impact Grimes, but Brogdon's 6'5", like he can guard twos.
Oh, 100%. I think it would harm Grimes the most. I mean, I think that if you're still finding minutes for Deuce, it's coming at the expense of Grimes. If this team is at full strength and if they add someone into that Fournier salary slot without giving up Grimes in the process, then you basically have to move out to a 10-man rotation then if fully healthy. And essentially just the role that Grimes was solely occupying prior to the trade, you just kind of split those minutes between him and Deuce and ride the hot hand, I guess, because Deuce, you can't say has been streaky because he's been very consistent since the OG trade, but Grimes has still had his, his struggles with consistency. So I guess that's kind of what that comes down to. But yeah, we're reaching interesting territory with Deuce where you got to kind of sit and be like, can you really afford to just sit this guy again? Like if you pick up another player for the bench, like I don't really think so anymore. He's playing too well for that to happen, I think, at this point. But Gavin, unless you had anything else to add, I think that's pretty much it for me. A good little feel good beatdown of a tanking team always hits, especially on a day when we're coming down off that emotional low of the weekend.
Yeah.
Even though the Knicks beat the Heat, the Randle news, and then good Randle news, and then a nice little win to cap the day off. I think today was, for all intents and purposes, a pretty nice little surprise, a nice little success for the Knicks today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It just feels like, what? I had a tough day at work. I'm going to have an extra brownie. I'm going to have an extra cookie. I'm going to watch Forgetting Sarah Marshall for the 15th times. I need to feel good. All time favorite comedy, by the way. Anyways, that's it for this episode of Locked On Knicks. The Knicks play again tomorrow. The Utah Jazz at home. Our buddy David Locke on the radio call, and our buddies, they just don't know it yet. Mike Breen, Walt Clyde Frazier. I assume. I haven't looked actually on the call on MSG. Maybe we'll talk to you after the game. Until then, he's Alex. I'm Gavin. Peace out. Oops, that's the wrong thing. 3, 2, 1.